Yeah, it's your boy Neferkari Celine back in the building. Yes, indeed. And today we're going to talk about black women during the Haitian Revolution. Let's get into it. Now, as you know, when we think of the Haitian Revolution, we always think of the legendary, illustrious generals that were on the front lines, holding it down, getting it popping. But a little known fact is a large portion of the Revolutionary Army was women, and a smaller portion as well was children as well. It was men, women, and children all fully engaged in battle. Now, of course, the generals and those who were in charge of brainstorming ideas and brainstorming the plan, they get the highlight reel. They get their name up in lights. They get their name in the history books. But it was thousands and thousands of people involved, dying, that gave their blood, sweat, and tears and a life on that battlefield. And a large amount of those people were women, black women, African women, plantation-born women, African-born women. And you even had some mixed-race women picking up shotguns and getting it popping as well. But the battle was fought on many fronts. Of course, physical, hand-to-hand combat, barrel-to-barrel combat, gun-to-gun combat. And then we had the psychological combat, the mental warfare, breaking down the enemy mentally, emotionally, demoralizing the enemy. And you also had women fighting on different fronts. You had the sex workers fighting on the main line as well. We got to get into it. A little known figure in the Haitian Revolution is a woman by the name of Henriette Samar. She died about 220 years ago in 1802. So she never even got to see an independent Haiti. She never got to see 1804. She gave her life for this, but she never got to see it. And that was the case for many of our ancestors. A lot of them died on that battlefield. They never even got to see the independence of a country, but they get a life and spill their blood for it. So for that, we always got to keep their name alive. Henriette Samar was a sex worker who gained popularity after she became a weapons dealer and intelligence agent of the Haitian Revolutionary Army by seducing European soldiers, smuggling weapons, and stealing government documents and delivering secrets to Toussaint and Celine during the War of Independence. According to historians, Henriette was born to an African mother and a European father. She was often seen passing through the barracks of French regiments. Her mission was to seduce the French soldiers, deliver weapons from the capital to the rebels. According to several sources, Henriette killed several European soldiers by bringing them to certain locations and calling for Haitian soldiers to finish them off. Henriette was known as a beautiful woman, described as a striking young lady with a beautiful body who was wanted by all men, especially those who could afford to have her. She was also very intelligent and attentive when interacting with the French elites, soldiers, and officials. Shortly after Toussaint was arrested, Henriette was also arrested and given a death penalty by the French army. She was marched to the capital of Haiti, where she was hanged in broad daylight in front of the church. So as we know, like I've told y'all before, Celine, ladies man extraordinaire, had women stationed in every corner, every block, every town, every city, every commune, every street corner. And of course, Henriette, she was plugged in with the Haitian Revolutionary Army. A lot of these brothers, the women that they were smashing on, they were involved in the Haitian Revolutionary War, whether they were intelligence agents like Henriette or whether they were nurses on the battlefield like Dessalines' wife and many of his mistresses. So, the women played an integral role that we cannot forget and we have to honor every time we get the chance. The next female that we got to honor during the Haitian Revolution is Marie-Jeanne La Martiniere. She was a female soldier who served at the legendary battle at Côte-à-Pierrot in 1802. During this battle, General Celine and 1,300 men defended a small fort for 20 days against 18,000 attackers. To inspire the troops at the start of the battle, Celine waved a lit torch near an open powder keg and declared that he would blow the entire fort up if the enemy broke through. The rebels forced their way through the enemy lines and escaped into the mountains. Over 1,500 European soldiers died in this battle and only 300 Haitian deaths. French General Charles Dugois was assassinated during this battle. Marie-Jeanne fought in a male uniform with a rifle and a sword. She was fearless and used a long rifle to snipe on the wounded enemy soldiers. Even as the fort was under heavy cannon fire, she kept encouraging the rebels. The French were astonished when they seen a woman standing on the walls. A sword at her waist, she distributed cartridges and helped to load the cannons. So yes, Marie-Jeanne La Martiniere, she was a mulatto woman. She was also the wife of Louise La Martiniere, another general in the Haitian Revolutionary Army, who I also believe did not get to see the independence be declared. I believe that he died sometime in 1802. Yes, he also died in November 1802. So many of these ancestors did not get the chance to even see the end result and the fruit of the labor that they were fighting for. The next woman that we gotta honor is the wife of General Toussaint Louverture, Madame Toussaint Louverture, Suzanne Simon Baptiste Louverture. As we know, the wife of the legendary general As we know, she was arrested and deported with her husband in 1802 when he was captured by the French colonial army. Napoleon Bonaparte sent General Charles Leclerc to apprehend Toussaint Louverture and deport him to a French prison. Suzanne and her children were transported to Bayonne, where they were placed under the supervision of General Ducos. She was tortured, but never provided any information about her husband. One source notes, when she arrived in prison, she weighed 250 pounds. She only weighed 90 pounds when leaving France. During all the years of torture, she gave a single answer: "I will never talk about my husband's business with his enemies." It was a mutilated Suzanne, a purely vegetative Suzanne, devoid of all her nails, with several broken bones. She died in 1816. I'm telling you, bruh, women in the present day were not built like the legendary women of the Haitian Revolution. Are you kidding me, bro? As soon as they break one bone, they telling all the business. They gonna tell you where they buried the treasure. They gonna tell you where they buried the millions. They gonna tell us where we keep the guns at. They gonna tell us where we keep the stash at. They gonna tell us all our stash houses. Man, women nowadays ain't gonna ride, you know what I mean, losing over 100 pounds, staying loyal to the death. Man, you crazy, bro. That's why this is the greatest generation of women of all time. The greatest. You have to have a special group of women like this, you know what I mean, to accompany a special group of men like this, period, point blank. The next woman that we gotta acknowledge, the wife of General Henri Christophe, Queen Marie-Louise Corvidad Christophe. As we know, unlike most black women born in the European colonies, Marie-Louise was born into an elite free black family, and she was never enslaved. She was the most powerful black woman of the 19th century. Her father purchased his freedom and owned one of the most successful hotels in the colony. Diplomats and elites from all over the world visited her family's hotel. At the hotel, she met her husband, General Henri Christophe, when he worked as a teenage employee. During the 1700s, Haiti was the richest European colony on the planet, powered by the active labor of 500,000 enslaved Africans. Her husband joined the Haitian Revolution around the age of 24 and later became king at the age of 44. By age 39, Christophe was the most powerful black man in the world and had the ability to mobilize an army of over 50,000 men at any given time. Marie-Louise had her own royal court and commanded a legion of all-female soldiers who served as her own personal bodyguards at the royal palace. Her husband committed suicide in 1820, which left the kingdom open to invasion. She inherited the modern equivalent of close to $100 million and went into exile under the protection of the British Navy. She lived in England among the British elite for over 10 years and then lived in Italy for over 20 years. She died in 1851 at the age of 73. One of her sisters later became First Lady of Haiti in 1845. The next woman that we gotta acknowledge is Empress Marie-Claire Félicité, the wife of General Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Now, as we know, Dessalines, ladies man, had a chick on every damn corner, every damn side of the island. You know what I mean? The chick was falling over trying to get to Dessalines, right? But it was one woman that stood out above the rest. Empress Marie-Claire. Now, I wasn't there. I can't tell you what she did to, you know what I mean, stand out from the pack. But whatever that Dessalines saw in her, it was enough for her to end up being the First Lady of Haiti in 1804. Empress of Haiti, not just First Lady, Empress. Because as we know, Dessalines claimed himself Emperor of Haiti. Yes, the Empire of Haiti is what it was called when it was first founded in 1804. Yes, indeed. Now, as we know, Empress Marie-Claire, she was born in Léogane to a poor but free family. She was known as the daughter of a governess of a religious order. She married Pierre Lunic, a master cartwright, who died in 1795. Shortly after, she began a relationship with Dessalines. During the siege of Jacmel in 1800, around the War of Knives against the mulattoes in the South, she made a name for herself for her work for helping the wounded and starving. She managed to convince Dessalines, who was one of the soldiers besieging the city, to allow some roads to be open so that the wounded of the city could receive some medical attention. She led a procession of women and children with food, clothes, and medicine back to the city, and then arranged for the food to be cooked on the streets. On the 2nd of April, 1800, she married Jean-Jacques Dessalines, whom she had a long-time relationship. They officially had 7 children. Princess Marie-Françoise Dessalines, Albert Dessalines, Prince Jacques Bien-Aimé Dessalines, Princess Celestine Dessalines, Princess Jean-Sophie Dessalines, Louis Dessalines, and Princess Celine Dessalines. Marie-Louise was described as kind, merciful, and natural, with an elegant and cordial manner. She adopted the numerous children produced by Dessalines' adulterous affairs. She was a contrast to her husband in her tolerance and support by showing kindness to people of all colors and all backgrounds. She was a great opponent of Dessalines' policy towards the white French people at Haiti. She saw to the needs of the prisoners, and she did not hesitate, despite her husband's anger, to save many of them from battle wounds suffered during the Revolutionary War. So, as we know, Empress Marie Claire, you know what I mean? She was the contrast to Dessalines, where, as we know, Dessalines, big gangster, big chief. She was the voice of reason. She was that feminine energy. She was that feminine essence that, you know, a big boss man need. You feel what I'm saying? So big shout out to Empress Marie Claire. Now, the next woman we got to acknowledge is one of Dessalines' mistresses. Hell yeah. Now, I'm so glad that the Shade Room wasn't around back in them days, because, man, the gossip in the magazine and the comment section would have been crazy when they found out how many mistresses and girlfriends and side chicks Dessalines had on deck. But we're going to speak about one of his more famous mistresses, Miss Euphémie d'Aguy. As we know, we can refer to her as the royal mistress and the intelligence agent under the regime of Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Euphémie d'Aguy was a rather mysterious woman who held incredible power in the Caribbean during the 19th century. Her mission was to spy and gather information on the military of southern Haiti, who were planning to overthrow and assassinate Dessalines. After the War of Independence in 1804, several mulatto generals from the South refused to live under the rulership of a black man, and many of them decided to stand in opposition to Dessalines' government. Euphémie met Dessalines during the 1799 Civil War between the black generals and the mulatto generals, also known as the War of Knives. Her relationship with Dessalines was public, and she was granted an allowance paid by the state and also owned several businesses. After Dessalines was assassinated by the Southern generals in 1806, a mob broke into her house with the intent to assassinate her, but she managed to escape. She later married another high-ranking general in the Haitian military. She died in 1834. Now, yes, Euphémie d'Aguy, scandalous woman. In fact, before she met Dessalines, she was already the quote-unquote baby mama. She already had a child with another high-ranking general who shall not be named, because, to be honest, I don't really remember his name. But yeah, she had a child with him and then ended up creeping with Dessalines for a time in between. And then when Dessalines died, she went back to, you know, the father of her child. So, you know, scandalous woman, but she played her role to a T, because Dessalines knew that there were plots coming up against him. He knew that there were conspiracies to assassinate him coming up against him. So what he did, the same thing he did to the French soldiers back during the Revolutionary War, using women as intelligence agents to spy and, you know what I mean, act like a fly on the wall and get into the enemy's camp. Dessalines actually sent women into the camp of the mulatto generals down south. And of course, when Dessalines got assassinated and it was exposed the role that she was playing, they tried to assassinate her as well. But luckily, I don't know what she did. I don't know how she pulled it off, but, you know what I mean, she got up out of there. And then she went back to, you know, her child's father and lived happily ever after and died in 1834. Very powerful woman, very wealthy woman, very elite status woman. You know what I mean? Always hung around powerful men. You know what I mean? Always was, you know what I mean, creeping with a general. You know what I mean? Never no low-ranking soldier, never no farmer, never no artisan, never no, you know what I mean, merchant. Nah, she creeping with a big general. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of women like that during the Haitian Revolution. You know, they only hung out with generals, only hung out with kings, only hung out with bosses. You know what I mean? It was just certain chicks. They just had it like that. You know, I guess, you know, those are probably the Instagram models of that day. You know what I mean? The next woman that we got to acknowledge, now that we've mentioned, you know what I mean, Dessalines' wife, Dessalines' mistresses, we got to examine the woman who raised Dessalines, the woman who raised him from a young boy up into a grown man, up into a head of state, the woman who was there to see it all. Victoria Mantu, aka Adrabayatoya, a female Dahomey warrior who was captured into slavery and then raised the greatest general of all time. Yes, indeed. Before the revolution, she and Dessalines had been enslaved on the same estate, and the two remained close throughout her life, with Dessalines referring to her as his aunt. She is believed to be born in the kingdom of Dahomey in present-day Benin. Some sources indicate that she was a high-ranking soldier there. It is unclear when she was abducted and enslaved or when she arrived in Haiti. Before the revolution, she lived on the Duclos estate with Dessalines. She was described as intelligent and energetic and shared a close relationship with Dessalines and the same hatred towards slavery. She was reported as a skilled warrior, midwife, and a healer who organized several rebellions before the momentous meeting at Bois Caiman in 1791. In 1804, Dessalines became Emperor of Haiti, and he gave Victoria the title of Duchess. When she was dying, the Emperor urged a French doctor to save her life, stating that Toya was his aunt who had shared his feelings since before the revolution. She was given a state funeral with a procession of 8 sergeants and Empress Marie Claire dressed in black between 2 non-commissioned officers who led the convoy. Big up, big up, big up to the Queen Mother of the nation, Adarabaya Toya, aka Victoria Mantu, the mother of General Jean-Jacques Dessalines. We're gonna call her the mother because she raised him. You know, her mother, his real mother passed away shortly after he was born. She never got to see him grow up to be the legendary man that he became. But luckily, Celine got into the hands of this beautiful woman, this legendary woman, and the rest is history. The next woman that we gotta acknowledge is another one of these powerhouse, powerful women who were among some of the most powerful women of her century. Yes, indeed, we gotta acknowledge Jules Lachenais, also known as Madeline Lachenais. A politically active and highly influential Haitian woman. She was the mistress and political advisor of two Haitian presidents, General Alexandre Pétion and General Jean-Pierre Boyer, and she exerted a significant amount of influence over the affairs of the state during the presidencies for a period of 36 years. She was called the president of two presidents and regarded to have been the most politically powerful woman in the history of Haiti before the introduction of women's suffrage in 1950. So as we know, back when women in America, white women in America complaining and getting their butt kicked, women in Haiti, they are enjoying power. They are enjoying a level that is non-existent to most women in the world. You're talking about women who have been on the battlefield. You're talking about women that have died on the battlefield. You're talking about women that have fought against colonial governments. You're talking about women that have held positions, high-ranking positions in government. You're talking about women that have been given payments by the state, serving as intelligence agents, working on behalf of a state. You know what I mean? Like, women really involved in the affairs of a government early in the early 1800s, way before concepts like women's suffrage is even a thought in the minds of anybody in the Western Hemisphere, let alone the planet. Madeline was the daughter of Marie Therese and a French colonist. She had a relationship with Alexandre Pétion, with whom she had two daughters, Cécile and Celine. In 1807, Alexandre Pétion became president and she acted as his advisor. Pétion appointed Jean-Pierre Boyer as his successor with her support. After the installment of Jean-Pierre Boyer in 1818, she functioned as mistress and political advisor to Boyer, as well as had a daughter with him, Azima. Her will affected the acts passed in Parliament between 1818 and 1840. In 1838, she persuaded Boyer to remain as president when he contemplated to step down. She also revealed and prevented a planned coup in which Faustin Soulouque was involved. After the deposition of Boyer in 1843, Madeline and her daughters, referred to as Boyer's family, were escorted to a ship to follow Boyer in his exile to Jamaica. She and her daughters lived on a pension from Haiti, which were officially only granted to her daughter Cécile. Boyer is reported to have married her or to have made plans to marry her shortly before her death. She died shortly after her arrival in Jamaica. Now, one thing I'll give Madeline, aka Jules Lachenais, is that even though she was a multiracial woman, I believe that she was only 1/4 black. She wasn't even a mulatto. I believe she was like the daughter of a mulatto woman and a white man, but she was an African identified woman, meaning that she subscribed to voodoo. When Boyer was in power, the Catholic Church was struggling and was at odds with the government because she was trying to get the Catholic Church up out of there. She was trying to decrease their power, trying to take land from them, trying to evict the Catholic priests, trying to get them off the island. She was an African identified woman. She practiced voodoo. Her daughter is named Celine. And if you know anything about voodoo, Celine is a very high-ranking spirit in the voodoo pantheon, especially the Haitian voodoo pantheon. So if her own daughter is named after figures in the Haitian voodoo pantheon, you could understand, like I said before, General Alexandre Pétion was an African identified mulatto. He was more so on the African side, but he definitely had, some European leanings, whereas Madeline, who was not even a half mulatto, she was like 25% black, but she was fully African identified all the way 100%, zero European identification within how she saw the world. And that also affected how the government was moving. And in fact, the Catholic Church could not even get a foothold in power until after Boyer died, after Pétion died, after all the revolutionary generals died, and then they could come in and they finally secured the deal around, I believe, 1860, sometime around there. So yes, indeed, the Catholic Church had to wait damn near 60 years before they could settle back in on the island and get a regime that was actually favorable to what they were trying to do. So, I got to give a big up to, Queen Mother Jules Lachenais, aka Madeline Lachenais. The final woman that we gotta acknowledge, now just because we named this short list is just because we're pressed for time. We already 20 minutes long. I hate making videos this long because I feel like y'all don't even watch it all the way through. You know what I mean? I know y'all got short attention spans. This the ADHD era, the microwave era. So I know when I'm dropping stuff that's 20, 30, 40 minutes long, an hour long, I know y'all be falling asleep. I know y'all be switching the channel, but it is what it is though. If you still listening, you still rocking with me, love you. Got love for you. Keep rocking with me. Subscribe, hit the bell, like, share, comment. Let's get into it. The final woman that we got to acknowledge, number one on the list, Sonny Bellaire, the legendary, illustrious female warrior, queen, mother goddess, Sonny Bellaire. As we know, Haiti was the first nation in the Western Hemisphere to integrate women into the armed forces, mainly because it was an ancestral tradition taken from the Kingdom of Dahomey, which had a female army of 6,000 plus warriors starting in the early 1700s who served as the bodyguards for the Dahomey king and fought against the French military in the Franco-Dahomeyan Wars during the 1890s. A large amount of Haitians traced their ancestry directly back to the Dahomey Kingdom in West Africa. The Dahomey Kingdom was destroyed in 1904 due to French invasion. During the Haitian Revolution, women served as agents and spies to infiltrate, gather intelligence, and poison the enemy. Women also fought directly on the battlefield and held positions such as lieutenant and sergeant. Some historians also claim that Haitian women were more brutal than the men. Sonny Bellaire was born free and married to Charles Bellaire, the nephew of Revolutionary General Toussaint Louverture. Sonny and her husband were responsible for the rebellion of the entire enslaved population in the Latibonite region. The French military launched a surprise attack and captured her in 1802. She was sentenced to death and killed at the age of 21. Her husband was also executed. She died bravely, screaming, "Long live freedom." So yes, indeed, I had to leave the best for last. You know, young goddess died in her early 20s, never even got to see an independent Haiti. Like many of our ancestors, I believe, she died in 1802, 2 years off the finish line. So she never even got to see an independent Haiti with her own eyes. Hopefully in the afterlife, in the ancestral realm, she was able to see it and be with us in spirit, but she never got to live to see it. Gave her life, died bravely, died like a G. You know what I mean? Early 20s. Now, how many women that's going to die in their early 20s, die with her husband, executed by her husband, no fear, not scared of nothing. You know what I mean? How many is going to ride like that? It's gonna ride to the end. When you looking at the barrel of a gun, when you looking at the noose about to get hanged, when you looking at the guillotine about to cut your head off, how many women is gonna ride like Sonny Bellaire? How many women gonna ride like Toussaint's wife? Getting tortured, losing over 100 pounds, breaking bones, losing fingers, losing fingernails. Losing everything you have, not giving up the secrets, not giving up where the money's buried, not giving up where the treasure's buried, not giving up the address to the stash house, not giving up no info about her husband. Loyal to the death. How many women is gonna ride and like Mary Jean La Martiniere, shooting up the enemy instead of surrendering to the enemy, because that's the easy part. Of course, most women are gonna ride with the enemy, sell out to the enemy. But how many is gonna grab the shotgun and bust shots at the enemy? Huh? How many women? How many? So as we know, we gotta big up the greatest generation of women of all time, the greatest women of all time, the women of the Haitian Revolution. We got to keep their spirits alive. We got to pay homage, and we got to give honor and respect. Yes, indeed. It's your boy NelsonAmadeus, Celine, and I'm gone. Peace. Also, how can I forget the many women that lost their lives when the French army was looking for their husbands, that were on the battlefield, that were hiding out, that were ambushing the French army, and they couldn't find their husbands. A lot of their wives, a lot of their children got drowned in the Caribbean Sea. So we got to give, many blessings and many honor and respect to the women that lost their life, that are still at the bottom of the Caribbean Sea, still to this day. Their skeleton is still there, and they died for Haitian freedom because they refused to give up their husband. They rather give up their life instead of give up their husband. So we got to give the ultimate respect for the women that rode. Especially, we got to give a contrast. The French women did not ride for the French men the way that Haitian women rode for Haitian men. A lot of the French women, they pretty much switched sides. They pretty much threw themselves at the black generals, pretty much became mistresses to the black generals, pretty much sold out their fathers and they brothers, and they pretty much switch allegiance. Many could say that to save their own life, but at the end of the day, the Haitian women, the black women, they didn't care about saving their own life. They give up their own life for their sons and their fathers and their husbands and the men that were sacrificing their lives for their freedom and their dignity and their sovereignty. Whereas the French women pretty much sold out to the next big thing in town. When it was black men running the scene, the French women pretty much ran to the black men. Essentially, that's really what happened. They ran to Celine, they ran to Toussaint, they ran to Christophe. Whereas the Haitian women, apart from the women that ran to Louisiana with the white man, but the women that stayed behind and fought, they fought, man, to the death, to the last man. They were ready to go all the way there. Whereas the French women, I don't even remember if, did the French women even throw a punch when we came through, burning plantations. I don't even remember if there was even an account of a French woman, applying any form of aggression. I don't know, but you know, our women were busting shots. Our women were, you know what I mean, slinging machetes. Our women were, you know what I mean, stabbing and dismembering and decapitating. Whereas the French women, you know what I mean, I don't know. I guess our women just built different. You know what I mean? I guess, you know, the African woman built different, man. You know what I mean? The European woman, she gonna bow down to, you know what I mean, the next man in power. Whereas, you know, the French had a hard time against our women. Let's just say that. Like I said, they said our women were more brutal than us. You know what I mean? Because our women did not believe in diplomacy and negotiation. You know, our women wanted your head. You know what I mean? For all them years and them decades and them centuries of oppression and of mistreatment, our women wanted your head on the damn pike. You know what I mean? So big up to, you know what I mean, our women for sure. Peace.
Reincarnated, I'm back in original fashion. I left on a horse and came back in the ass, and I left with abundance and came back to famine. We used to be pyramids, now we be rapping. Look how the mighty have fallen. Used to be running, now we be walking. When you be cooning, that's when they applauded. Selling your soul, your sons and your daughter. Gotta come up in this shit, they stuck in the mix. Really, my heart it be breaking. That's why I'm stacking that paper and handle my business. Pass it down in generation. Talking about money and power and building a nation. That's a deadly combination. Never be watching the TV, they pushing agendas, falsifying information. Know they got malice intentions. Step in the room and I'm feeling the tension. Enemy watching, he blocking my vision. Pay for the check cause I need my redemption. Building my kingdom, I need it protected. Ready for war like a young money Congo. Never decided the team is the motto. Up in the crib and I'm whipping up waffles. Up in the crib and I'm smoking gelato. I'm chilling, I'm taking my pain and make it ambition. I'm blessed by the gods, but I ain't religious. I came for the power, they came for the bitch. They making no hourly wage, I got business. This is an art and they can never be taught. Selling my soul, I can never be bought. Play with my money, I see you in court. Run to the check and I do it for sport. Babylon falling, I go to the source. Packing my luggage and go overseas. Shorty be with me and she so Elise. Shorty be chocolate, I'm calling her Hershey. Secret intelligence probably gon' murk me. Don't fuck with brands cause nigga I'm Haitian. Say the wrong shit and you're smacking they